Ladies and gentlemen, Carol Roth.
Is this on? All right. All right, so we're going to have a little Oprah moment here. A little too loud. It is too, I'm so loud. Could someone turn this down a little bit? Number 4. Anyone have number 4? Number 4. Oh, trust me, you don't want to hear me at 11, Rick. All right, so we're going to have a little Oprah moment here. Fantastic talk show style panel for you. I do want to set the expectations, though, up front. This is not a favorite things show. We'll not be giving away fuzzy slippers, coffee makers, or new cars. Although we will work on Connie for next year. Perhaps we can get the new car for next year. What do you guys think? All right. Cars forever. Yes, we'll work right on that, Barry. But what we're going to do today, I think, is even more valuable for everyone in the room, which is present some amazing knowledge with fantastic people around the concept of making decisions. How many people have a hard time making and committing to decisions? And the rest of you are lying. How many of you have a hard time making and committing to decisions? Okay. Well, hopefully our panel today can put some context around that, and then we'll have a model at the end that will really help it and hone in. So I'm really looking forward to this dialogue and amazing panelists. So I'm going to invite the first one up. First, we have Rick Calvert. Rick, if you want to come on down, and I'll give you a little bio while we're doing this. I can be Rick for the No, all right. Well, we'll move on to panelist number 2, and I will make a decision in the meantime about who the third panelist will be. It is the mystery panelist. All right, but we don't need Rick because we've got, and I know he's here, Gary Goldstein. So big round of applause for Gary. Now, what you may not know about Gary, he is a film producer turned business producer. His projects kind of tiny. They've only grossed like over $1 billion and won Golden Globes and been nominated for Academy Awards. You might have never heard of like Pretty Woman, Under Siege, or The Mothman Prophecies, but if you have, you can thank Gary as a producer. Today he produces businesses, and he has a gift for helping entrepreneurs and executives change context, elevate dialogue, and create a new story to drive greater success in business and in life. So Gary, thank you. Oh, and now you're at the bottom, so you've got the unmute button. There you go. That should work.
Am I unmuted? Good morning.
All right, Laura Fitton. Haha, yes, come on. Yes, come on. All right, so Laura is here as well. How many of you use something called Twitter? All right, well, then you should very well know Laura. Laura is HubSpot's inbound marketing evangelist who previously co-authored Twitter for Dummies and founded 140.com. She's credited with convincing Guy Kawasaki and thousands of tech execs that Twitter would have real business value. So thank you for that, Laura. And she founded the first Twitter for Business consultancy, which is Pistachio Consulting, in 2008, and has been speaking professionally about the business use of Twitter since 2007. So very, very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, mystery panelist, decision making. What is my decision on who the mystery panelist is? I think I'm going to pick Angel. Woo! Angel Djambazov needs no introduction. He is an avid follower of Game of Thrones and a foodie. And you are my decision for a panelist here.
Don't be like, oh, there we go. On. Is that on? There we go. Don't be like Ned Stark from Game of Thrones, if anybody knows that, in business. Yes.
And he will be playing the part of Rick Calvert this morning. So thank you for that.
Great expo, Angel.
Thank you.
All right.
We're opening in New York. No, sorry.
All right, so I want to kick it off. Laura, I'm going to start with you. And so if we're going to be talking about decisions, I think that we need to have a definition of what a decision is. So what's your decision of a definition and making a definition, or a decision, excuse me?
So that's a great question. I was very confused while I was on this panel because I was the first hand up when you asked who sucks at making decisions.
That's why you're on this panel. We're going to work through that today.
So I'll give you decisions in Laura's world. I get seized by something and I get blind and I can't see anything else and I start charging towards it. And so the decisions are the things that get me closer to there or get me around the brick wall when I slam into it and fall down and I'm bleeding on the floor. So it's having, like, what, is Tim still here? I mean, Tim was freaking me the heck out yesterday because, yeah, when I don't have a purpose, I can't make any decisions or any progress. But when I do, I don't even see the decisions being made. They just, like, boom, boom, boom. I've got to keep moving forward. I can't get stuck here.
Gary, I want to bring you into the dialogue. Do you have a different definition of what a decision is or what making a decision is?
I don't know. I think every moment in life is a decision. But what making a decision? I mean, it's not. Terry just used one of my favorite quotes of all time: "The man in the arena." And in there's a word called devotion, right? And to me, every decision is a devotion. And it's to me, it's either you are being ethical so that your choices and your behaviors reflect your values, and you're devoted to being the best version of you with every decision, every choice, or you're falling from grace.
Angel, do you think that there's an element of permanency or commitment involved in making a decision versus making a choice, perhaps?
No, I don't think so. I mean, for me, again, being the Game of Thrones guy, I think in business you have to react, to what the circumstances are. And if you have made a decision and you're just going down the route of that decision and are not aware of your circumstances or how things have evolved and how things have changed around you, you're going to get your head chopped off because you're going to get blindsided by something. You have to be aware and taking that input. And that decision should be a course, but can't be something that's hamstrung you from evolving. So I think the decisions themselves have to have that evolution, in order to stay vibrant.
Gary, let me pivot over to you. Let's talk about evaluating decisions in the context of goals. Where do goals play into making a decision?
Often very badly. I'll give you an example. When I first, I'm a self-defrocked attorney. I'm a refugee from the law. I became a criminal defense lawyer. It was a horrible choice for my temperament. So I fled from, but I went from San Francisco to LA to be in the film industry, which is another criminal community. So I was very comfortable. But one of my heroes was Francis Ford Coppola. His early films to me were just as good as storytelling got, and that was what obsessed me as a child. I was all about fantasy and story and reading, and so my first goal in getting to LA was to knock on the door and be embraced by Francis Ford Coppola and live happily ever after. Didn't quite happen.
That didn't happen? That's shocking.
It's amazing, actually. And I was no more shocked than you, really. So I was frustrated. I would knock, I would call, there was no email back then. This was back in the Pleistocene. But no one responded to me, and I thought, that's really bizarre. They have no idea how much I want to really work with them. Francis Ford Coppola, none of you are old enough, but or maybe, he had toured the U.S. in all the grand theaters on a triptych 3-screen of Napoleon. Do you remember the film Napoleon from the 1920s in color, accompanied by a live symphony? Big commercial success, huge critical success. People were bowing down to Francis. Once again, he'd done something extraordinary. Out of the blue, I was offered the opportunity to pay good money to option the rights to The New Babylon, the last black and white expressionist film out of before Stalin clamped down. It was a gorgeous film about the communards in Paris with a beautiful score by a then 21-year-old Shostakovich. I borrowed money. I had no money. I borrowed money, a lot of it. What to me was, if it was $80,000, I knew it was going to take me $80,000 in 1980. Wow, 3.
Who did you know back then?
This man, he's crazy. His name,
Clearly.
Lou Horowitz. He had usury. Everyone knew and loved Lou in the film business. He was the court of last resort. If you couldn't get money from anybody on the planet, if you were that unworthy, you went to Lou. And he charged you obscenely usurious prices, and that was the deal. But he was actually a good man, and why he loaned to me, this is really dumb. So I knew it would cost me. I was going to test this film in Columbus, Ohio. I was going to open in Columbus at the greatest renovated theater, Gilded Theater. I hired the Teamsters, the Symphony, the Hall, marketing company in Columbus. $80,000 spent. I was ready to get the call from Francis Ford Coppola. Unfortunately, when I arrived in Columbus, I learned that the marketing company I'd hired, instead of doing it during the Arts Festival before school let out, when there were another 50,000 people, not one ticket had been sold, school had been let out, the Arts Festival was over. Literally, there was a big empty hall. So I went on radio and gave away some free tickets. Basically, I lost in one weekend $80,000, and I came back to LA with my tail between the legs, and no greater opportunity to speak to Francis Ford Coppola. So I guess what I would tell you is, you may have a goal firmly in mind, you may be driven by a passion, you may know absolutely where you want to go, and you may be just as stupid as I was, right? But all it did was redouble my passion, I was too stubborn to quit.
Would you go back and do it differently?
Hell no.
And I want to know, did security take you away when you showed up at Francis Ford Coppola's house?
Yeah, there are stalkers.
All right, good. Angel, let's talk about the process of making a decision. Do you have a formal or an informal process that you go through to make decisions?
Well, I mean, it's twofold. It's if it's passion-driven or if it's desire-driven, that decision, process is ruled by that. To me, if it's solely business-driven, which don't necessarily cross, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. To me, it's tactical in the way that, as a business, what decisions do we have to make to keep growing, and then what decisions do we have to make to keep whatever is out there that is going to put us under or put us out of business from happening. Because I think oftentimes people get so lost in I have to hit these bases, that they don't pay attention to, this is going to put us out of business if we don't do X. And oftentimes, I've been in budget meetings with companies, and they will, one just kind of practical example, we were talking about links online inside their online store, and they're like, well, do we have to have sections, landing pages for when a certain customer comes onto our website? And I was like, well, you don't. You could just have them wander around your website, but it'd be the equivalent of going into a department store and them having no sections, signs when you walk in. Yes, eventually they may stumble into the right section and buy something, and you will make some money that way, but you left a lot of money on that table, and not engaging the customer that way or not helping them get to where they need to be is eventually going to kill your business, because the customers themselves are going to get frustrated, because online especially, they don't have that. It's not like, oh, there's the ambiance of the website. This is kind of a cool building I'm in. The screens are all going to be the same after that initial impression of what the UI is. And sometimes companies are completely blind to that, because the reason they asked that question was not for any other reason, but because, well, we have engineering dollars that we don't want to waste. So if we're not wasting engineering dollars, you're slowly killing parts of where most of your revenue is coming from. And that's always the question I want businesses to ask themselves is, what is going to put us out of business next month? Because we've, are so struck in what we think is our current structure.
It seems like a very logical and rational process, but what about, when it is something that's passion or purpose-driven, does that change up at all for you?
It does. I'm a little bit like Laura, I get blinded by just going forward, and within the passion. I think the main thing is having a close friend or someone in the business that can give you a gut check at a certain point. Before you spend that $80,000, did you check the dates on when people will be there at that show in order to make sure that $80,000 that it was? Did someone remind you of those dates? Did you pass a gut check to make sure that while following the passion you didn't miss something? And I think friends are very important for that. So that's the one aspect that helps. But otherwise, I just stumbled forward looking for that thing I'm after.
Yeah, I think that the word gut is a perfect segue, and Laura, maybe you can talk to this a little bit. How much of this, in terms of decision making, do you go with your head versus what's down here?
Well, like I said, I'm the bad kid in the corner, right? I'm not a great example. I go very much from my gut. And in the first part of 140, that made us unstoppable, raising money with no experience, no qualifications, no reason to be running a software company. And in the second half of 140, that was a huge problem because when we lost that purpose, the thing that I found at 144 was that I was convinced software integrating the data from Twitter was going to change the entire world and change everybody's lives. And I'm still convinced of that. But once it became impossible to do that with 140 because of how Twitter was acting, because of how our investors were impatient, and we had to just go pivot, right? You can drink when I say pivot, by the way. I had nothing. I didn't know how to make decisions. I made decisions too slowly. It was really, really hard. Pivoting is hard. So one of the other things I'll say about decisions and why gut was so important with it for me is that I think the vast majority of people see a brick wall off in the distance and stop because there's a brick wall over there. It'd be stupid to run at it. And the reality is, being an entrepreneur is a systematic process of running into the brick wall confidently. And about half the time you get there and there's like a ladder, or it's actually 2 inches tall, or there's a big path around it you couldn't see from far away. So the vast majority of people simply stop themselves with a decision long before the problem exists. So I think decisions, that's another problem about decisions that you need to be aware of, and why gut can carry where brain always can't. Because, brain sees brick wall and brain is right. And brick wall is either surmountable or it's your $80,000 weekend that's going to shape the rest of your career. When they say celebrate failure, I had a couple engineers who hated that term. They're like, celebrate failure, Jesus, whatever. It's so important because if you're afraid to fail, you stop running towards the brick wall because that's the smart thing to do.
Yeah, you can't pivot out of fear.
Yeah, no, very, very well said. Gary, let's come to you and let's talk about short-term versus long-term implications of decisions. I would imagine when you're producing a movie like Pretty Woman, like Under Siege, there are certain decisions that you make that have shorter-term implications that you may have to make some trade-offs in the long term or vice versa. How do you balance those?
It's a really good question. The film, that particular business is such a bizarre. It takes an eternity to get a film made. Every film's a startup, the shortest I've ever gone from script to screen is 3 years, and that's super fast. You get a speeding ticket for that.
In social media land, 3 years is like 300 years in real time.
Yeah, and yet every day is a sense of urgency, and yet because it's a given. As an independent producer, several things. Number one, that conservatively 9 out of every 10 projects that you spend years developing, spending money on, are going to die. You're going to bury your children, right? And the one that gets through will have died many times before it comes back to life. Pretty Woman, you mentioned, failure, ditch, car accident, bankruptcy. Richard Gere says no a bunch of times. It's just constant death. And then in the last few months, it really comes together. And it only comes together because you make decisions not to quit. But life is about, as an independent producer, life's about brick walls, it's about failure. So you got to get really happy about that. And if it, and it's about living in a constant state of triage. And I think that one of the great, I think that we're not really taught literacy in our culture on a lot of fronts. We learn by experience later on. And one of the things that I've sort of discovered is, we think that we're going to achieve, we're going to get past a certain threshold, we're going to experience great success, life is going to be rosy and glorious and happy lives. And the great news is that's not true. The great news is that we're constantly confronted with these same decisions and problems and challenges and brick walls. Our capacity just expands enormously. And I read it in the workbook that Liz and Terry put out, a quote from Donald Trump about something about decisions and always about the bottom line. But I think the bottom line is about yourself, right? And if that's your bottom line, then you just keep making bigger and better decisions. And when you crash and burn, it's so glorious that it lights up the world, right? And you still go forward. And that's the game. Did I answer anything that you asked me?
I think you did, and I think you answered 3 other questions as well. So we got 3 for 1 value. How about that, folks?
Can I jump in on the expansion of capacity thing, because that is so fracking important?
I think we can let you do that.
A year ago, different kind of fracking. I'm just trying not to drop the F-bomb, which is hard.
Bless you. The management thanks you for that.
Hi, live stream. Hi, Mom. Last May, starting in December, I knew things were going to be really bad for 140. And so by last May, I was kind of exhausted from that. I knew there was about 3 months worth of money left. And it was one of those times where my personal life decided to just implode. And I was like, oh, neato. Boyfriend walked out the first day he met my kids after 9 months of dating. Dad found a lump that day. Friend died. An old legal issue came up. Old financial issue came up. And I'm like, I know these periods are hard, but I know I get stronger from them. But I felt bad because I knew I was going to be useless to the 3 most critical months of 140. And then about a month later, I was at a conference in June watching this panel of psyched up entrepreneurs who were all going to change the world. And I'm like, why? Where'd that go? I don't have it anymore. And I'm failing people. And then I was like, no, I am leveling up like a mother. Say it. I am leveling. Nobody plays a video game. I'm old school, right? Mario, we're getting run over by barrels is about the only video game metaphor I have for you. Insert a better video game metaphor here. No one plays a video game and starts hating themselves because the barrel keeps hitting their guy. They're like, oh, I have to learn how to do that new jump. I just need to learn.
Except for Richard Lewis.
Sorry, way over my head, sorry. But being patient with yourself, that those really destructive, painful, scary times are simply an expansion of capacity, and trusting that process and owning it and saying yeah, I'm leveling up right
but
now.
Let me ask you, because I think this is really important. I think this is important for everyone out here. What's your fuel? So in that moment when everything is coming together, world barreling down, how do you get that fuel to turn it around and say, I'm going to use this to move forward instead of wallowing in self-pity?
That I've been lucky enough to have bad shit happen enough times and be surrounded by people who got me through it. And I realized it was probably the 7th wave of a bunch of bad shit happening at once that I was finally in the moment. I mean, it took me a month, right? Able to say, oh, I'm leveling up. And as soon as I had that realization, then the energy came back. And I was still exhausted. I mean, by the time Brian Halligan and I were on the phone talking about the final aspects of the acquisition in August, and I was on vacation with my kids and, spending every afternoon on the phone. And he's like, you're fried. The minute we sign this, you're going on vacation.
So having somebody else there, and I know Gary's dying to jump in here, so go ahead.
because I don't think I have a very good one yet. This was the first time where during the adversity, I had the presence of mind to realize it was just capacity expansion. Usually I get lost in the wallowing during the adversity, and I think iteration helps.
Gary, go ahead, jump in.
I just think that, we intellectualize so much. And the bottom line is I don't really think a lot from here. I mean, that's where I think. I don't act from here. I act from here. It's the gut, the viscera, the heart. That's where the decisions, for me, the important decisions get made. I mean, the thing about failure and about screw-ups, and there's only a few things in life that can happen that are really bad. You lose someone that you love. Your health goes to shit. What else can happen? I mean, as a producer, you get in the habit of going broke. I'm a serial poverty victim. But what's good about that is that not only are my projects a startup, I'm always a startup. I get so in the habit, I've developed this musculature. I can create new wealth. I get that. The worst thing that can, when something bad happens, when I fail, when my project that I've invested my spirit in and my pocketbook, when it crashes and burns, what happens? Nothing. Nothing bad ever happens when you fail, except that you beat the crap out of yourself. And if you can learn not to do that, you've conquered the universe. It's really that basic.
Do you think that not enough people really look at what the downside is, that they sort of make up these fake, the world's going to kind of fall apart, or even don't even name it, that they just say the word fail and they don't even go through the exercise of naming what that bad outcome is?
No, I think you have to be very pragmatic. I'm not saying just, be a passionate spirit going about the universe. I mean, yes, you have to be a business person, and you have to be pragmatic, and you have to seek counsel and mentoring and say, what are the things that I need to think about? And, producing really as much as anything is putting out fires before they happen. So you do have to anticipate, and there's a lot of that, absolutely. But at the end of the day, you can solve more problems by speaking to people from the place that counts and motivating them in the right way. You can put out more fires that way than, all the spreadsheets in the world.
Don't tell my husband that, because he makes spreadsheets for everything, including horsepower per dollar when he was buying his car. All right, I want to wrap this. I swear on my life, it's bizarre, but I want to wrap this up. So let's kind of bring it all home and together. Can you encapsulate, one nugget of information, one takeaway regarding decisions and decision-making process that you want to leave everyone with? Angel, you go first.
Well, I think when I feel that I am getting, decision writer's block, where I can't make that next decision for some reason, I get lost on what it is, or I'm not sure what it is, I don't want to double down suddenly on something, the one thing I do is step away from whatever it is, walk away from the table. In my case, I have this as a habit every Sunday. It's one of my few habits, which is I'll get in a car with my wife. We will abandon the computer, abandon the phone, go on a 6-hour drive where 4 hours of it, nobody can actually reach us, and go find pie, which is one of my favorite things to go find. And then by the time I come back, that break gives me enough energy to be confident in what that decision is. So that way I'm not just trying to grind through a decision or chase something, out of fear or out of time crunch or whatever it is. So that way I can make a decision at peace with that decision once I make it. If I'm feeling like that, I'm caught up and crunched down.
And how much of that is stepping away, and how much of that is the pie?
I'd say about 90% pie. We live in a beautiful place, so the stepping away is a huge part of it. But having a quest when you step away is a nice thing as well.
It's a diversion. Laura, what about you?
I'm going to sort of dovetail off a couple of things he said. One is, if you're trying to make a decision and fear is pointing you towards one side, go the fuck the other way. And never make a decision based on fear. It is a terrible decision-making tool. And the other is, if you're a really good decision maker, learn from what a bad decision maker I am and respect that some decisions do need to be put on the back burner. Sometimes you can't make a decision because it's not time for that decision to be made yet. And then suddenly the next day something happens that makes the right course obvious. So don't procrastinate, but leave yourself some space for that because, yeah.
And don't impose the false deadlines on yourself.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Gary.
Decisions. Warren Buffett. What's the quote? Warren Buffett said something about if you're going to own something, make sure it's something you want to own, not for 10 minutes, but for a lifetime, for years. And to me, that's kind of what decision making is all about. It's not about whether it's ultimately going to work out or not. You're going to do your best to make sure it does, but make a decision that you're going to be proud that you made, regardless of the outcome, because it comes from a part of you that matters. And the other thing that I would say is one of the decisions. By the way, I'm very glad of the decision I made when someone said, "Come to Blog World in LA," however half a year ago or whenever it was, I forget. And I thought, why would I go to Blog World? I don't even blog. And I went. And sometimes you just trust your gut. You check and you say yes. I don't know why I'm going to this damn thing, but it's often, when in doubt, better to say yes than not. Because relationships trump results. That's my guiding motto. If you up-level the people in your life, it's all going to go better, right? So my whole thing, all my life, has been about collecting really excellent people, which has turned out to be a really good choice. And one of the things I did was, someone said, "Come to Blog World." I said, I have no idea why I would go to Blog World, but I'm going to go. And amongst the motley crew that I met were Terry Starbucker and Liz Strauss. So I'm grateful to Rick Calvert, who's not here.
And on behalf of Rick, I thank you.
Rick, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
He'll be happy to know that he played. What's the name of the game that Rick plays so much?
What is Rick's game? Game of Thrones. Well, we'll just call it Game of Thrones right now.
Anyway, that's it.
All right, and I'll add one other thing about decisions. I think one of the things I know for myself, and something I see entrepreneurs struggle with a lot, is making decisions that are right for you and not right for other people. I think there's a huge temptation when you see other people making decisions or having success or doing things that you think are interesting, that you make decisions based on their path instead of your own. And so having a very, very clear lens on what it is that you want, your own definition of success, your own circumstances, goals, and objectives is really, really critical, because you can't be happy and you can't be successful if you're trying to chase down somebody else's path. So,
Can I add
on
one
that,
quick thing?
Okay, well,
All
I was
right.
going to leave it on that, but Laura wants to add
Sorry,
one more quick
I know,
thing, so
I'm
go
being an
ahead, Laura.
asshole. Sorry, the woman who talked about feeling so shy when she came in yesterday and not knowing how to relate to the room brought up a really important thing. And your assessment of decisions for others versus for you, you have no data about others. You have so much data about you. And one of the fundamental human errors, and you're probably all doing it right now because I do it whenever I look at a speaker, is you compare your insides, which, hello, they're all a mess, all of us, right? You compare your insides to everybody else's outsides. And so if you're making decisions on someone else's outsides, that's so little data to go on. Please don't do it.
Yes, you always have to peel back the onion. You never know what's at the core, but what's at your core is what matters. So I want to very, very much thank the panel for your great information. Gary, Laura, and Angel, as Rick. If you could give them a rousing round of applause. Thank you so much. And we're going to transition to a model, so thank you.
And thank you, Carol Roth, for a great interview. Fantastic. Well done.